From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Live Chat. Thanks so much to everybody tuning in. We have behind us the free agency bracket. Paul Mancano and Danielle Allentuck here. Last time we were on 2 weeks ago, we did the round of 32, starting out with 32 free agents. Some of those names have since been signed, but we are going to today narrow this down to a champion and try to predict whom the Orioles will sign. This is not who we would sign, but who we think the Orioles will go after. Should be a fun exercise, Daniel.
Yeah, we get in the brain of the Orioles front office and we try to think like them and pick who they would go after.
Exactly. So we have now Sweet 16 names behind us. We've broken it down by position. So we have starting pitchers, we have position players, we have relievers, and we've broken down the starting pitchers by both left-handed and right-handed starters. Danielle, would you like to run us through the left-handed starting pitchers, the 4 names that we have remaining?
Let's do it. We have James Paxton, the number 1 seed, against Wade Miley, and then Eduardo Rodriguez against Jordan Montgomery.
All right. And who would be your pick of these 2?
I'm going with Paxton.
Okay.
He's 35. He's coming off Tommy John surgery a couple years ago, but still had pretty solid numbers last year. I think they could get him for a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal. He's not going to cost a lot. Maybe similar to Kyle Gibson's $10 million deal last year, which is something that they've shown that they're willing to afford. But I think he could be a solid veteran for this rotation. Yeah,
35 years old. He's probably not going to get, like you said, a long-term deal out there in the open market. And his injury history, aside from just the Tommy John, it's a pretty long list of injury woes that he has gone through. You mentioned he did have a productive season last year, 19 starts, a 4.50 ERA, almost 10 strikeouts per 9 last year. The whip was a little bit high. I think the question is, can he be durable for an entire season? And if he is, I do think he is maybe a number 3 starter, number 2 starter on this team, probably.
Maybe pushing it a little.
Probably behind Kyle Bradish and probably behind Grayson Rodriguez, assuming both those guys are healthy to start the year.
Right, agree.
So if he is available for them, I think he would make a lot of sense. And on the other side, Wade Miley, a lot different pitcher than the guy that was in Baltimore several years ago, who really struggled after they traded for him. He has really revived his career and had a nice back half of his career. They had a mutual option for him in Milwaukee, $10 million. Both sides of that deal declined. I think that says a lot about Milwaukee's, about the value that Miley thinks he has in himself, and the fact that Milwaukee is probably looking to shed some salary.
Yeah. Which also makes me think that Wade is going to be looking for something that's a little more than $10 million, which I don't know if the Orioles would be willing to pay him that.
Exactly. Now, he is an older pitcher. He is 37, so he is even 2 years older than James Paxton. However, I do think he is going to cost a little bit more, like you said, average annual value. He might not sign a longer-term deal. I don't know how many teams want to pay him into his 40s, but I do think he's going to cost just a little bit more. This is not the front office that brought in Wade Miley, so there's no overlap there. But yeah, I'm going to go with James Paxton here as well. Okay. Write him on down. So James Paxton moves on to our Elite 8 in the free agency bracket. We have one more matchup in the left-handed starting pitcher region, Danielle. That would be Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery. We went from 2 guys that I think are probably going to get short-term deals to 2 guys that could get very long-term deals. I think both these guys could get deals in the range of 5 to 7 years, and both of these guys are viewed as top-of-the-market pitchers right now. We saw Eduardo Rodriguez decline his 3-year, $49 million option with Detroit, and Jordan Montgomery was a postseason hero for Texas. He's going to get paid. Of these 2 guys, which one do you like more?
So I think for Orioles standards, Jordan Montgomery is probably going to get re-signed by Texas, and they're going to be willing to pay him a lot more than the Orioles would, maybe give him that longer-term deal. I mean, Texas has shown that they're willing to give out the big contracts. So I don't really know if he's even a feasible option for the Orioles at this point. So I have to go Eduardo Rodriguez here. There's some connections to him from last year. He opted out of that Tigers year. Never really said why, but you have to assume maybe because he wants to be on a competitive team. That's why he opted out. And the Orioles are a good place to go if you want to be competitive for a long period of time with the talent they have coming up.
And of course, we want to let you know we are live on YouTube. So give us your thoughts as we go along. We got a comment about Robert Stevenson. That's not until we get to the relievers. So just hold your horses. We are on the left-handed starting pitchers for the time being. Yeah, I mean, Jordan Montgomery, whether it's Texas or somebody else, some team is going to say this guy can anchor our rotation for a long time based on what he did in Texas. Now, he doesn't come with a qualifying offer because he was traded mid-season, so there's no draft pick compensation there should a team go out and sign him, and Eduardo Rodriguez the same because he opted out of his deal. But both these guys, I think, are going to command big, big deals in free agency. And yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised, Danielle, when you picked Jordan Montgomery to beat Martin Perez in the first round.
I know you were, yes.
Texas pitcher over Texas pitcher. I think Martin Perez is probably still in the range for the Orioles because he, has proven to be a pretty solid starter, maybe back end of the rotation starter. Jordan Montgomery is an ace. And of these two aces, I tend to think Eduardo Rodriguez, who is a former Orioles farmhand, by the way, I think he makes more sense.
Agree.
All right. Eduardo Rodriguez moves on to our Elite 8. We are going to switch over regions before we move on from the Elite 8 to the Final Four. Let's go over to this side of the bracket, Danielle.
Okay.
Let's go to our relievers, and let's get to our commenter who's discussing Robert Stevenson. Stevenson had an upset in the first round, beating Jordan Hicks, who I thought as the number 1 seed was going to make a deep run in this bracket. However, Robert Stevenson, who has become a very hot name this winter, a guy that really had a rough start to his career, revived his career with a couple good months in Tampa Bay. I think he is going to get a larger deal than perhaps his name value might indicate. He last year finished on the season, first half with Pittsburgh, second half with Tampa Bay, 3.10 ERA, 13.2 strikeouts per 9, a whip under 9 in 52 2/3 innings. He is still only 31 years old. He's a righty going up against, in this region here, in this Elite 8 matchup, Hector Neris, who had a phenomenal year last year with Houston. Age 35 season, he is entering 1.71 ERA for Houston last year, over 10 strikeouts per 9. I think if the Orioles got either of these guys in free agency, I think Orioles fans should be pretty happy.
Yes. So not thinking like the Orioles for a second, I think Hector Neris would be a really good fit for this staff right now. He doesn't have closing experience, but he pitched a lot of 7th and 8th innings for the Astros. Really good postseason numbers, made about $8 million last year, which should be obtainable for the Orioles to top a little bit. He could maybe even be their closer if needed, or be in competition for that. With that being said, Robert Stevenson is going to be a lot cheaper. So I could see them going for a guy like that who's been revived from Tampa and, has that chance. So this was a hard one for me, but I think I'm going to go with Hector Neris here.
We haven't seen Stevenson be used as a closer.
Right.
Do you think the Orioles would prefer a closer because they're going to be without Felix Bautista for the year?
I think that they need people. They either need setup people or they need people they can rely on late innings. I think Robert Stevenson is kind of the guy who falls in the middle of that.
Okay.
And I've seen Stevenson throughout his career. I covered the Rockies for a little bit, and I've seen him with Tampa. And I just don't know if he has that closing ability. And I don't think you go and spend a lot of money on a reliever who can't at least give you the option to pitch late innings for you.
Sure. All right. So who would you pick here, Neris?
I'm going Neris.
All right. I think that's fair, too. I think that the Orioles have the opportunity to spend big on a reliever, because if they go for middle of the market, maybe bottom half of the market for a starting pitcher, they could save some of that money and use it on a short-term deal for a reliever. And Neris is 35. So what team is going to be paying him, a 3-year deal? Probably not.
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe if they could get one of these two guys for a 2-year deal with the 3rd-year option, you could bridge the gap while you wait for Felix Bautista to come back, have a closer in Hector Neris, and then Bautista comes back. You move Neris into an 8th inning setup man. That would be a pretty ideal setup, I think.
I think so too. And it would even take some of that pressure off Cano, having another guy who can handle the 8th or 9th inning. If they're going to have Wells and Hall be starters or be in contention for starters, they don't have any other options.
Yeah.
They would have to go out and find somebody like that.
And we saw how much bullpen depth hurt this team in the last month of the season after Bautista went down, and especially in the playoffs. So adding to that bullpen, I think, is going to be critical.
Agreed.
Another matchup that we have between our relievers, who moves on to the Elite 8? We have Keenan Middleton, who is another guy who was traded midseason, ended his season with the New York Yankees. And we have Ryan Stanek, another Houston guy. Keenan Middleton, I think, is the better pitcher right now. 3.38 ERA, 11 strikeouts per 9 last year, started the season with the White Sox. He's 30 years old. And on the other side, Ryan Stanek, probably a lower leverage reliever of these two. 32 years old, 4.09 ERA, lower strikeout numbers, whip about the same. 50 innings this past year, had a much lower WAR. Of these two guys, I think the Orioles would probably prefer Keenan Middleton, and I think he's a slightly better option here.
Agreed. And I think that's who they would go for. I mean, he had kind of a weird year. I think he got traded 3 times last year, or was on 3 different teams. His numbers went down a lot as the season went on, but I was really impressed with how he started the year, and I think that he could probably replicate that if he was able to stay in one environment.
All right, so Keenan Middleton moves on to our Elite Eight. Let's go back to this side of the bracket, Danielle, and of course we are live on YouTube, so keep your comments coming as well. Position players. We've just lumped them into all one category because we view starting pitching and pitching in general as a much bigger need for this team right now. A couple guys have dropped off this list. Jason Hayward, I think we're going to have Tommy Pham just automatically move on just because I don't think the Orioles are going to swoop in at the last minute and try to acquire Jason Hayward before his contract becomes official. First matchup here, though, we do have Kike Hernandez, the 1 seed, going up against Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Of these two, which one do you like more?
This was a really hard one because they are very similar players. I mean, both have career 240 batting averages. Both are very versatile and can play pretty much any position. I wanted Kike Hernandez just because he's a higher seed, but I didn't really have a strong inkling between the two. Yeah,
I think Kike and Kiner-Falefa, I think, like you said, will sign comparable deals. Too this winter. Maybe Kike will get a little bit more because he has a slightly higher name brand.
Right.
And we've seen his peaks be higher than Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, but he is so variable and year to year. You've seen great seasons with the Dodgers, and then you've seen very poor seasons. I mean, he had a great year 2 years ago for the Red Sox.
Right.
And then last year it was pretty much a disaster, and they had to trade him back to the Dodgers where he kind of figured things back out. Last year hit just 237, had a negative WAR, 646 OPS, 11 home runs, elite vibes guy, and would fit very well in this clubhouse. And that's why I think I would have Kike Hernandez moving on, especially because he's slightly more versatile than Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, but that's only because Kike is maybe the most versatile player in baseball.
Right. Yeah. I mean, off the vibes alone, let's do it.
Yeah. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I do think, will probably get a call from the Orioles, or at least be on Mike Elias's radar. And we know that the Orioles like to go after those former Yankees infielders. See Rougned Odor. He hit 242 last year with 6 homers, an identical 646 OPS for the Yankees last season. So I think both those guys could be options as the Orioles could sign somebody to a very small major league deal or a minor league deal to bolster their infield and have a veteran there. All right. I think we have to move Pham on. I think Tommy Pham beats Jason Hayward. Yes. I did like Jason Hayward fitting in with the Orioles, but it makes a lot of sense that he went back to the Dodgers because he revived his career there.
Yeah, and it was a good deal for him. I think it was about $9 million, which is way more, I think, than the Orioles would have offered him. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And as for Tommy Pham, hit 256 last year, 16 homers, started the year with the Mets, ended up on the Diamondbacks. He has just bounced around from team to team, and he's been productive pretty much everywhere that he has gone.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're getting from him.
Exactly. And while the Orioles probably won't sign an outfielder this winter, I wouldn't discount it if they decide to trade one of their outfielders for a starting pitcher.
Agreed. Yes.
All right, let's go back to our final region here as we go from Sweet 16, I should say, to Elite 8. We have right-handed starting pitchers. First matchup here, Michael Wacha against Sonny Gray, who has already signed. Sonny Gray.
Pretty easy one.
Going to the St. Louis Cardinals. 3 years, $75 million for Sonny Gray. I tend to think the Orioles would have gone shorter in terms of the amount of money there.
Definitely. That was a great deal for him. But, I mean, Wacha could be a good fit on this team. He made 24 starts for the Padres last year, 3.22 ERA, pretty durable, 134 innings, about $7.5 million last year from the Padres. I feel like he'd probably want about 10, which I think that the Orioles could give him. But I think he could be a solid middle-of-the-pack reliever starter for them.
Absolutely, yeah. And somebody that if you suffer injuries, you feel very good about him kind of anchoring your rotation in the middle portion of the season.
Very
durable veteran. I like him a lot. So he may move on to the Final Four, but we have one more matchup in our Sweet 16 to Elite 8. And that would be Lucas Giolito against Michael Lorenzen. Orioles were connected to Michael Lorenzen around the trade deadline. He ended up going from Detroit to Philadelphia in his only all-star season of his career. Threw a no-hitter, but didn't end up as a starter in the postseason for the Phillies. And then Lucas Giolito moved from team to team to team this past year, and he unfortunately put up worse numbers as the season went along. That is an area of concern for me for Lucas Giolito, but considering he's going to be 29 next season and had a 4.88 ERA last year, we've seen the peaks with Lucas Giolito, and they are very high. As somebody, James, in our comments, thanks for commenting, and please comment along as you are watching. We want to hear your thoughts. Giolito, his age is going to be a big factor, and I think a lot of teams will say he still has a lot left in the tank. We feel like we can get a top-tier performance from Lucas Giolito for years to come.
Right. And I agree with that, but I think Lorenzen here, give him a shorter deal. Orioles theoretically have some starting pitching that could come up in a couple of years. But I say he had a great year. He pitched 184 innings, which is incredible to me. He's very durable. He's probably going to be relatively on the cheaper side for starting pitchers, but he has, some upside there. He has the experience. He went to the All-Star game. So I just see him being a better fit for the staff.
Yes. And what has Michael Elias shown us? And maybe, his philosophy will change now that he has a winning team. But Michael Elias has shown us he is willing to pay for guys who are consistently on the mound and eating innings.
Yes.
And he is less likely to take a shot on upside, to give a guy guaranteed money for the chance that he works out. He's more likely to go middle of the road, Jordan Montgomery type, Kyle Gibson type. And I think Michael Lorenzen probably fits that bill.
Exactly. I feel like if he's going to go for somebody who maybe has the upside, he's going to trade for that.
Yeah.
He's not going to sign that.
Agreed, Cody. How about demos? Keep your comments going as we go along on YouTube. We have gotten down to our Elite 8, and we're going to our Final Four, Danielle. This is exciting times. Let's go back to the left-handed starting pitcher region, where we have the matchup of James Paxton and Eduardo Rodriguez. Paxton would cost a lot less. He would take a lot fewer years. Eduardo Rodriguez is, if not an ace, a guaranteed bona fide number 2 starter in your rotation.
Yes.
What type of pitcher do you think the Orioles will sign?
So this is where I'm torn, because if you go just by their track record, Paxton's the easy choice here. He's going to be cheaper. You can get him for a shorter deal. But I do think this is the winter where we see the Orioles actually do a long-term deal. Maybe it's just 3 to 4 years. Maybe it's not that long. But I think that they've kind of realized, they need the starting pitching, and they're going to have to pay for it. I'm going to go Eduardo Rodriguez here.
Wow. It would be the first guaranteed multi-year contract that Michael Elias would have handed out as GM.
Yes.
The first one the Orioles have handed out since Andrew Kashner before the 2018 season,
yes.
That disastrous
But it's also
their
first winning season in years. It's the
True.
First time making a playoff since 2016, and if they want to be a playoff team, they're going to have to act like it.
This is true. I would tend to go with James Paxton just because until we see it from Michael Elias, I'm not ready to predict it happening.
Okay.
I think we got to flip a coin. Do we have a coin
I
on
don't
us?
have a coin,
I mean, I will die on the James Paxton hill if I have to.
I'll go with you on this one. Just
Are you sure?
They haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it yet.
But if I end up being right, everybody just needs to know that.
Exactly. All right. Well, James Paxton. Thank you, Danielle. I'll give you the marker there. Moves on. I don't think a lot of Orioles fans would be thrilled if they do sign James Paxton, but I just don't see the Orioles topping. James mentioning that Eduardo Rodriguez still follows the Orioles on Instagram.
This is my favorite time of year. We'll start checking each other's Instagrams.
I think that probably just was an oversight from Eduardo Rodriguez. He just never unfollowed them because he started out in their system.
Hey, James, what other teams does he follow?
Yes, let's
let us know.
Let's get a full list, and we'll start to break it down. I just don't see them topping 3 years for 49, and that's the baseline because that's the deal that he turned down.
But he could get the same amount and be on a winning team.
He could.
We don't know what he's valuing here.
True. And I think that Orioles fans would be quite happy if the Orioles were to hand out a contract of that length and that amount. I have to see it. I have to see it before I can believe it.
Okay.
Danielle.
That's fair.
All right. Back to this side of the bracket. We have Hector Neris facing Keenan Middleton in an Elite 8 matchup. Neris would be, I think you could say, if you sign him, I'm not saying he's guaranteed to be the closer on opening day, but he's at least in conversation and at least competing with Yennier Cano.
Yes.
Keenan Middleton, I don't think would be your closer on opening day.
No.
But
or ever.
I do think, or ever, unless there are severe injuries.
Yeah.
But I do think Middleton offers you the kind of depth that Michael Elias might be looking for. And if this team believes that Yennier Cano can be a legitimate closer, from day one and take that ball and run with it, I think that the Orioles could go after somebody like Keenan Middleton.
I mean, this to me is where I'm still unsure because we still don't know Tyler Wells and DL Hall what their roles are going to be next year.
Sure.
And if they're not going to be in the bullpen where there would be the late inning guys as they were in the playoffs this year, and I thought they did great in those roles, then you need to go out and get a Hector Neris. You need somebody to fill that role. I don't actually believe they're going to, they may enter spring training saying they're going to rotate contention to be a starter, but I really just don't see it for either of them. Maybe Tyler Wells more than DL Hall.
Yeah.
I still think you need another arm. You can never have too many high leverage arms. I don't think Hector Neris would be that expensive. I mean, Middleton would be cheaper, but I don't know. I don't feel like you need to pay a lot of money for a middle of the inning guy. So I'm going Hector Neris.
Important update real quick from James. He follows the Red Sox, the Tigers, and the Orioles, all teams he's played for. So thank you for doing the deep diving research there, James, to determine which teams Eduardo Rodriguez still follows on Instagram. And maybe if he follows another fourth team this winter, we'll have an idea of where he's going to sign.
Some inside journalism there.
There we go. Danielle, I'll just side with you here because I think this is a toss-up in my mind. I think it really just depends on what this team internally thinks of Yennier Cano. Because I think if they think he's a start, or if they think he's a closer, then they will be fine signing a 7th, 8th inning guy.
Agreed.
But if they say, let's just make sure that we have somebody who can fill that role in case Cano struggles, I think they'll go after somebody like Neris. But of the two of them, I'll go with the cheaper option because that is the Orioles' MO. So I would go with Keenan Middleton, but I'll go with you here and Hector Neris. Yeah.
Good call. Good call.
So Hector Neris moves on to our final four. Let's go back to our position players, Danielle. What's our Elite 8 matchup?
All right. Our final one, Kiki Hernandez versus Tommy Pham. I'm going with Kiki Hernandez because
vibes.
I like
vibe
the vibes.
King. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that they're really going to go out and sign a position player, so it's kind of hard for me to get in this one. But I like his versatility on defense. I like that he can play everywhere. I could maybe see a little more power coming out of him. He's not a power guy at all, but the Orioles found something in Adam Frazier last year. I know Orioles fans didn't love him, but he did hit a career high in home runs. Was a good veteran in the clubhouse. I could see Kiki being the same.
I agree. And I think Tommy Pham would probably prefer to sign somewhere where he's guaranteed to get a role on opening day. And the Orioles, unless they make a big trade in the next couple weeks, cannot guarantee Tommy Pham a spot in the outfield.
Right.
I think that, he is probably going to have to be, a rotational fourth outfielder if he signs with this team right now and they don't make a major move. People agreeing with the vibes aspect there. So let's move Kike Hernandez onto the final four. It would be fun. I mean, the Orioles have been bitten by just going after a vibe guy before, see Brett Phillips. But in this instance, I think the cost, the risk would be very minimal, and he could just fill a lot of different roles for you.
He has a track record in additions and vibes. So
yes,
there's
exactly.
a little bit more here.
Brett Phillips was just kind of pure vibes at that point in his career when the Orioles traded for him. All right. So he moves on to our final four, and then our final Elite 8 matchup here in our right-handed starting pitcher region. We have Michael Wacha going up against Michael Lorenzen. Battle of the Mikes.
It is.
Michael Wacha, of these two, is going to cost more, I tend to think. 32 years old, 3.22 ERA last year. Not a huge strikeout guy, but 8.3 is not terrible. They had a club option and a player option for Michael Wacha. The club option was $16 million. The player option was $6.5 million. I think if San Diego had the cash to spend on Michael Wacha, they would probably have liked to keep him. Right. But I think that the way that they are kind of looking to shed salary this winter, I think that, that's probably what sprung his free agency. I think he's going to cost more than Michael Lorenzen, but I do think Michael Lorenzen would be a solid addition just to have another quote unquote innings eater, reliable, once every 5-6 days starter. We went with the lower quality player in James Paxton and Eduardo Rodriguez. This is an instance where I do think the Orioles could go with a higher upside swing in Michael Wacha.
See, I don't agree.
Really?
Because
now we flip roles.
Michael Elias loves an innings eater.
He does.
I mean, he had Kyle Gibson. He's had a couple other guys through the years. And Michael Lorenzen is exactly that. It to me, it depends on how much do they believe that Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez and John Means are going to be their go-to guys next year. And they just need, that 4th, 5th starter to eat up innings. Michael Lorenzen would be perfect for that. So if they believe in our starting pitching, then Michael Lorenzen is where you go here.
All right. I agree, because also the Orioles being connected to him at the trade deadline maybe shows that there's already some interest there in the Orioles front office with Michael Lorenzen. Whew. Michael Lorenzen's going to move on.
Okay.
You've convinced me, Danielle.
Yeah.
James commenting Lorenzen fits this team just because of the hair.
Yeah, this is a very good hair team.
I mean,
you do have to admit it.
You throw Michael Lorenzen in that rotation with Dean Kramer. If he stays in the rotation, I mean, 2 elite hair guys.
Yeah. DL Hall, if he grows it back out.
That's going to take a while. That's probably going to take a little bit of time. That was
a whole offseason. So.
He does. That was a devastating day in spring training. He did it for a good cause, but that was devastating to see him show up with a completely shorn head after.
Did not recognize him, to be honest.
No, those luscious locks were beautiful. All right, we have our final 4 matchups here. And now we're going cross position here as we try to predict who the Orioles will sign. Not who we would sign, but who the Orioles will sign.
What color are we going to use?
Whatever position the player is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
We could get red versus red in the finals if we go with both starting pitchers. But our final 4 matchup, and we do want you to comment along and give your thoughts on who you think the Orioles will target this winter. We have James Paxton coming out of the left-handed starting pitcher bracket. We have Kike Hernandez as the lone position player. Representing the relievers, Hector Neris. And the right-handed starter who is in the final 4 is Michael Lorenzen. Danielle, do you want to preview the matchup between James Paxton and Kike Hernandez?
Yeah, I mean, we have James Paxton. He's a 35-year-old starter. Had Tommy John surgery a couple years ago. He's on the older side, but he's durable, just like Lorenzen is. Earlier in his career, he turned down to $10 million. Sorry, that was Miley.
He's 35.
35, solid numbers. Kiki, as we have said, is the vibes guy. He can do everything. He can play everywhere. He's veteran, knows how to fit in. But I just don't see them signing a position player. And
I agree.
If they do, it's going to be a pretty cheap guy.
I agree.
So this one's pretty easy for me. Even though I didn't think James Paxton should be this far, I think he's the one who moves on.
If you had to pick somebody from the left-handed starting pitcher bracket to just pluck out and put in the final 4, who would you have put here?
I still like Eduardo Rodriguez. Wow. I'm still fighting for that one.
All right. I just don't think I just don't think he's gonna take what the Orioles are offering. But
we don't know what they're offering.
We don't know what they're offering. I just don't think they're going to be offering very much. I'll say that. James Paxton, I agree. I think just based off position, I think it's much more likely that the Orioles sign a starting pitcher than it is that they sign an infielder. Not that there's not room for a position player, a veteran, but Kike Hernandez is really not guaranteed a spot anywhere on this roster just because you have so many young guys. The infield is pretty much set. If Jackson Holiday makes the opening day roster, there's another spot that's gobbled up by another young prospect. Plus you have Joey Ortiz and Connor Norby and Kobe Mayo waiting.
And they're all so much cheaper.
So much cheaper. Yeah. I think it would take several trades where Michael Elias is dealing, from their depth, from their prospect rankings. And they say, all right, let's go get a veteran infielder to help bolster this
Which
group.
still would not be the guy I think they would go after there.
Who do you think they would go after?
Well, I think it would depend on who they trade.
True.
I mean, I think that they would go after maybe just like a veteran infielder, not somebody who can play everywhere, which is versatile, but I could see them getting like an outfielder and then letting the infield stay as is.
Yeah, we kind of tried to check all the boxes here in case they trade infielders, in case they trade outfielders, because I think they could do both. But yeah, if they trade Anthony Santander, maybe they sign Tommy Pham.
Right.
If they trade an infielder, maybe they go out and sign Isaiah kind of Falefa, something like that.
Yes.
All right. Well, James Paxton moves on to our championship. Salem saying, I like Eduardo Rodriguez, but he's still a little bit older. If you like younger pitchers, James Paxton's not going to be the guy for you. Unfortunately, he's 35 years old. But we have one more matchup here. Hector Neris representing the relievers and Michael Lorenzen representing the starters. I think the Orioles will probably leave this winter with one starter and one reliever.
Agree.
Whether it's free agency, they sign the reliever, they trade for the starter, or vice versa. I think they're going to acquire one guy for each spot. So there's no positional advantage here. Of these two, which one would you say?
So going just by their track record, Lorenzen is the guy I think they'd go after. I mean, he fits the exact mold that Kyle Gibson and Jordan Lyles fit on his team. But they know they need a late inning guy.
Yeah.
And I think that they know they probably have to go outside to get it. And they've admitted that.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of trade options out there. We were talking about that the other day, like trying to even come up with a trade for somebody who could be a potential closer. There's just
hard to do.
Not a lot of options. So they're going to have to sign somebody. Hector Neris, I think, he's going to be expensive. He's going to be in the $10 to $15 million range, I would assume. But, I mean, that Orioles have paid that. So
yeah.
I'm going to go with Neris.
I regret to inform you did put Paxton on the incorrect line here. It's okay. I will move them. But no, I'll just use that line anyway. Who cares? Yeah. It's all made up. I made this in my living room. I think that generally starting pitchers, it costs more to get an average starting pitcher than it does to get a pretty good reliever.
Agree. Yes.
Teams just tend to value starting pitchers more because of the innings, because of what they provide. This one is going to be so close. And I do think that the Orioles would probably rather just spend $20 million on Hector Neris than, 25 for a middle of the road starter in Michael Lorenzen, because that you're getting at least, and potentially elite reliever in Hector Neris.
Right.
At least very good reliever in Hector Neris. Michael Lorenzen is just going to be, we've seen throughout his career, he's going to be middle of the road. He's going to be your number 3, 4, 5 starter. He's going to be average.
And I feel like they have a 3, 4 starter.
Yes,
now,
exactly.
What they really need.
Yeah. And I think that the guy that they're going to sign in free agency is probably more likely to be a reliever, a good reliever, than it would be to be an above average starter.
Right.
Especially because the Orioles there are a lot more trade options for good starting pitchers right now in this winter than there are for relievers.
Great. And maybe even a guy who could be under team control for a couple of years.
Exactly. All right. Neris is going to move on.
Okay.
And then we have our championship. Before we get to our championship, Danielle, there was a rumor. Do you want to address the rumor that's going around currently on social media about the Orioles offering a pitcher?
Yeah.
A long-term contract?
Butcher his name. I apologize. I tried to find pronunciation, but Naoki
Uwasawa?
Yeah, I'm trying
Uwasawa?
trying to find a pronunciation so I can get it right. But
and if they acquire him, we'll get a good pronunciation from him in the locker room.
Well, we're gonna get it anyway, so we can say
it's true.
It. But haven't been able to find one so far. But there is a rumor going around. He was just posted the other day. He's a Japanese pitcher. That the Orioles are going to offer him a multi-year deal. It was about $2 to $3 million a year, I believe, which is a pretty affordable deal. I did a little research into him. He's not, as of right now, a super strong top-of-the-line starter. I could see him being a 4th, 5th starter. I'm not sure what the option situation would be for him, but he has about a 90-mile-per-hour soft fastball, so kind of middle of the road there, a little low for a major league pitcher, high strikeout rate, but really low walk rate. So It's intriguing. It's kind of, to me, kind of a low risk deal, but including the $2 to $3 million, the Orioles would also owe his Japanese team a posting fee. So there are a couple other options you have to look at there. It's a little more expensive than just $2 to $3 million a year, but pretty affordable to try to get some depth. I would be intrigued to see what the Orioles could do with him once they have him under his pitching staff. But he's definitely not a top-of-the-line starter, at least as of now.
He's not Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who is probably going to get top dollar from a team this winter, and I tend to think the Orioles will not be involved there. But it would be fascinating to see. They have not signed somebody from overseas in quite a while, so to see them go after somebody, and of that length, 4 to 5 years was the reported amount, or the rumored amount.
Right.
That would be an awfully long deal for Michael Elias to offer a free agent. That we have not seen.
Which makes me wonder if there's options involved, like what the other simulations of the proposed deal are. But right now, it's a lot of rumors, not a lot of concrete stuff out there on it. Yeah,
but on the BaltimoreBanner.com, Danielle is going to keep that monitored as well. So where you can subscribe, by the way, for $1 for 6 months. Very exciting stuff. All right, final matchup here, Danielle. James Paxton against Hector Neris. Left-handed starter against right-handed reliever. Who are you going with?
Just based off of our conversation we just had, where it is easier to get a starter right now than it is to get a reliever.
In trade.
Right, yes. I think that they have a lot of infielders and a lot of depth in their outfield, low in the minors, that they could trade for a top-of-the-line starter. I think that they're going to have to be willing to do that. Like we said, they don't spend a lot of money on that, but if they trade away, maybe 4 prospects for one top-of-the-line starter, I could see them doing that.
Yeah.
So for that alone, I'm going with Neris.
I agree. I think that the Orioles will, if I had to predict right now, water gun to my head, I would say they water gun. Yeah. We keep it PC here. I would say they trade for a starting pitcher and they sign a reliever.
Agreed.
Just because the names that are being thrown out there as well in terms of potential trade targets, we don't exactly know, but there are a lot of quality names being thrown out there. Corbin Burns, of course, his name has been floated out a couple off seasons in a row now. Right. So we're seeing Tyler Glass now. That would be an interesting in-division trade if the Rays were to deal him.
Yeah.
But there is no team that is better set up to make a trade for one of these top-of-the-line starting pitchers than the Orioles. Yes, they have the best farm system in baseball. It's the deepest farm system in baseball. They're going to hit a huge roster crunch if they don't trade some of these guys. So maybe some kind of package of a Kobe Mayo or a Connor Norby or a Joey Ortiz, Colton Cowser could get a deal done.
Even a veteran guy. Throw somebody else in there. You have the prospects who can come up and take the spot.
Yeah. Santander, Austin Hayes, any of these guys, I think.
Maybe some of your guys at first base. Who knows?
Yeah. So
lots of options.
Lots of options. And I think Michael Elias would prefer to give that $10, $20 million to a reliever that he knows is going to be very good for him.
Agree.
All right. Hector Neris wins the bracket.
Nicely
Exciting
done.
Stuff.
Yeah. Did not see this one coming when we started, to be honest.
The fact that we broke down the starting pitchers into both left-handed and right-handed made me think a starting pitcher was going to win.
Me too. I mean, the odds were there.
Yeah. I love how we're surprised by it. We were the ones making the decisions all along.
Yes.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in for all of these. Also, another comment as well. Thanks for everybody who has tuned in. Kevin mentioning that Bieber might get traded as well by the Guardians. Another guy that I think the Orioles would be very happy to acquire if they can, and they can make a very strong offer for. But we will have all of your coverage throughout the offseason. The offseason is just getting started. Danielle, you are going to be in Nashville.
I will be, yes.
For the winter meetings. Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
As we see a lot of deals get done. There was a time when nothing happened during winter meetings, and then I think we saw that one winter meetings in 2019 where Steven Strasburg and Anthony Rendon signed, Garrett Cole signed, all in that one winter meetings. And now we're seeing, more deals get done during that time frame.
Yeah. I mean, last year's Trey Turner and Aaron Judge got signed during the winter meetings.
Arson Judge. Arson Judge, remember
Yeah.
Ill-fated tweet. Arson Judge to the Giants.
Yeah, and this year winter meetings start on Monday. You see a lot of deals happen, in the days leading up to it, starting Saturday, Sunday, when everybody starts gathering in Nashville where they are this year. This year, obviously, Shohei Ohtani. I think once he signs, the rest of the dominoes will fall, but I think we could see a lot of things happening at the same time. So it'll be interesting. Last year, the Orioles left with one starting pitcher that they had, Kyle Gibson, that they signed, before the meetings had even started. So
yeah, they announced it on the first day of winter meetings.
Yeah, be interesting to see, where they go from here.
So maybe the Orioles will get their, dip their toe into the water next week. Also, Kevin commenting, when is the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft? I'll be honest, Kevin, that is so deep in the weeds. The major league portion of the Rule 5 draft is during the winter meetings. Off the top of my head, I don't know when the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft is, but that is a fascinating wrinkle to keep an eye on. The Orioles tend to make selections there, but a lot of those guys just do not end up. I believe Cole Uvila was a minor league Rule 5 draft pick by the Orioles a few years ago. So fascinating to follow, but I tend to think that that's probably lower down on the priority list for the Orioles. But they also have a shaken up front office this winter, as a lot of guys have changed roles. We saw Brad Selick go over to the Washington Nationals. That has created a little bit of a shuffle in the front office. And the Orioles like to get a lot of business done, a lot of front office business done during the winter meetings as well. That's when they make a lot of hires, a lot of, discussions with people around the industry. So we could see some dominoes begin to fall next week.
Yes, agreed.
All right, Danielle, what's your Twitter handle?
At @D_Allentuck.
I am at Paul Mancano on Twitter. Thanks to everybody for following along, and follow us along at All Banner Sports. I will be back Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Whether Danielle is going to join me via Zoom, I have no idea. We'll figure that out. But we will have a chat for you next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much for tuning in. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, $1 for 6 months. For Danielle Allentuck, I'm Paul Mancano. The winner of the free agency bracket is Hector Neris. We'll see you later.